In this video, we're going to be talking about Python lists. Lists are a very important data structure, one you'll use in a lot of different programs. In older programming languages, lists were called arrays. And so if you take a class like C++, C, something like that, they will talk about arrays, which really all that it is a list. So in Python, we can create a list by having a open bracket, and then you list your items out, which these could be strings, it could be variables, whatever you want, with commas between them, and then a closing bracket like what's shown here. So let's look at an example. Here's an example in which we create a variable called colors. We set it equal to the list that contains white, black, pink, and purple. And actually, there should be only one quote, double quote here, not two. I'll have to fix that in my notes. A list can have any data type, so they all really don't have to match, to be honest with you. In a lot of cases, they do. You know, like this is all contains strings, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So some prime numbers, we could create a variable called primes and set it equal to the first half dozen or so prime numbers, which are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Actually, 9 isn't a prime number, so I need to remove that from this list. But as you can see here, we can create a list of numbers like this. We can create a list of Fibonacci numbers. If you don't know what Fibonacci numbers are, I'll let you Google them, but just give you a really quick description. Is the Fibonacci sequence starts off with 0 and 1, and then you take those two and add them together, and that result becomes the next element in the list. So 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. Then you take the next two items, the last two items in the list. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. We put 2 here. Take the last two items in the list. 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. 3 plus 5 is equal to 8, and so on. And you can do that forever. That's called the Fibonacci sequence. As I stated a minute ago, it's possible to have a list that has different types of variable, different types in them. So here we have an integer, the integer 1, a floating number, a 3.14, and then we have two strings. And this is perfectly valid in Python. Some of your other older programming languages like C or C++, they all really need to be of the same type. Like they all need to be integers, they all need to be floats, all need to be strings. But in Python, it gives us the flexibility to be able to put whatever we want in a list and use it way we'd like. So let's look at some basic list operators. Now, so far we've talked about how to create a list, but how do we access elements of a list? The way to do that is to specify the list name. Like for example, up here, this is my list, and then an index number, which the index number is going to be an integer value, and the first element in the list actually has an index number of 0. So yes, Python is a C-based language, and most C-based languages are 0-based, which means that the first element in a list is actually referenced by using an index number of 0. So I know that's still a little unclear, so let's look at an example. So let's say we have a list called weekdays, and we want to set it equal to the days of the week. So we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So to reference Sunday, this is actually in the 0th location. Monday's in the first location, index location. Tuesday's in the second index location. So to reference Sunday, we would write weekdays, open bracket, 0, close bracket, and that represents Sunday. So let's bring up Thony and let me clear some of this stuff out so we can create. Let's go ahead and create this list. Press enter, we can see what's in weekdays by just typing out weekdays and see we got a whole list there. If we want to reference the first day of the week, we would say weekdays 0, and that's going to return Sunday. We could print weekdays 0. Of course, that prints out Sunday. For Monday, it's the 1st, so on. That is a little confusing for students to begin with, but you do catch on. Like I said, a lot of your C-based languages are 0-based, and so you will see this in other languages as well. One thing that's neat about Python is if you're not really sure how many elements are in the list, you can reference the last element by using -1. So this is in the 0th location. The last element is in the -1, Friday's in -2, Thursday's in -3, and so on. So that's really handy. If you're building a list and you're wanting to reference the last element, you don't have to worry about the length of the list. Just while you know there's at least one element in it, you can always reference the last element by just saying -1, and it will return the last element in the list. If you want the second to last element in the list, you'd say -2, and that would return the second to last element in the list. So that's actually somewhat handy from time to time. Now, one common mistake that people will do, and to be honest, I will from time to time, if I'm in a really big hurry and not really paying attention, I will sometimes make this mistake. I will see a list, let's say scores of 50, 75, and 100, and I say, oh, I want to reference the last element. And so I'll do something like this. That's going to give you an error. Why? It's because the third element is actually over here. It doesn't exist. It's not in the list yet. Remember, 50 is at the 0th location. 75 is in the first, index 1. This is index 2. Index 3 is way over here. So please keep that in mind. And notice here we get the index error, which is saying that this index value that we have here, 3, is outside of the range of the list. Sometimes we want to create a list from another list. So for example, if we're wanting to create a, I did it again. If we're wanting to create, we've got weekdays here. Let's just say that we want work days. We could go through and do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or since we have weekdays, we can use just a subset of weekdays. So let me print out weekdays again, Sunday through Saturday. Wouldn't it be nice that for work days, we really want these elements here? We just want Monday through Friday. So we can we can slice a list. In other words, taking a subset of the list by doing something like this. Work days is equal to weekdays. And we can say 1 to 6, because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, I think it's 5. And what that does is it'll take this list of elements and put it into work days. Well, let's see what's in work days. Okay, it's only through Thursday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to go 1 to 6 to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what it does is it goes 1 to 6, but it doesn't include the 6th element. That is sometimes a little bit confusing as well. As we have here, 1 through 6. If you want all days except for Sunday, you got 1 to 7, or there's a shorter way of writing it where you just put 1 colon and then you leave it empty. And what that tells Python is you want all of the elements starting with the first element all the way to the end of the list. If we want all days but Saturday, we could do 0 to 6, include all the days except for Saturday. I'll leave this as an exercise for you. Or if you know that you want to you want to get all of the elements of the list up to a certain element, you can write it like this. And so it's going to start at the beginning of the list of weekdays and grab all those elements up to, but not including that last element, the 6th element. So I'll leave that as an exercise for you to do. Length, sometimes we want the length of the list. So one thing I haven't talked about, and I probably want to include this as in my notes, is how do you create an empty list? You could do something like this. My list is equal to the empty list, which looks like this, just open and close bracket. That's the empty list. If you want the length, to see what the length of an array is, or length of an object, actually, it doesn't even have to be a list. You write it like this, len for length, and then your list name, and it's 0. Let's do the same thing for weekdays. We come up with 7. So you can find the length of the list by writing it like this. Actually, here we go with the my list. There's times that we want to see if an element is in a list. The way we do that is we use the in operator. So if we have a list, let's say my list is equal to 1, 2, 3. You could say is 3 in my list, and that will return true or false. Is 4 in my list? It'll come back with false. So you could actually use the variable like this, like my list, or you could actually have the list to be like this, where you actually specify the elements in the list. So you could say in that way as well. It makes no difference. Since we've talked about the in operator, there's also a not in operator. So you could say 3 not in my list. And this is like the not operator that we talked about before, logic operator. It just returns the opposite of whatever the in operator would return. Notice here is that up here for return false, but down here for returned true. Sorting's a big deal. Sometimes we want to sort elements in a list. It makes it a lot easier at looking up items to see if they're in a list. So let's say we set a list equal to 100, 75, 50, 25. We can sort the list by saying mylist.sort, and it sorts the elements. Oops, mynum, sorry, mynum. And then if we type out mynum, it sorts the elements in place. So here we created the variable, here we sorted the variable, and here we output the variable. So notice that these now are sorted. We can also, if we have a list, let's look at week days again. We have Sunday, Monday, all the way through Saturday. We can reverse the elements of the list with the reverse function like this. If I can spell it right, reverse. Notice now that it weekdays contains same list elements, but in the reverse order. Saturday's at the beginning now, and Sunday's at the is at the end. If you want to reverse it again, it should put it back to the way it was to begin with, and it does. All right, well, that's it for lists. That is just a small subset of what functions we have available